Good morning, folks. This is Mr. Dan coming to you from the Landscape Design Classroom, and today I'm here to talk to you about selecting urban trees. So the main idea here is how do you select the right tree to fit the right location in an urban setting. So if you take a look here on the right, you have some common thornless honey locust along a roadway, and these trees are actually pretty nice because they grow tall, they stay skinny, and when their leaves fall off, typically they disintegrate pretty quickly, so you don't even really need to clean them up. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So looking for the right tree. So wanted. This is a listing you would find in a USDA article. So this is a horticulturalist in search of small to medium-sized pest-resistant, low-maintenance trees that thrive in the face of environmental extremes. Can take car exhaust, insects, dogs, a lot of different things you would see in an urban setting. So whenever you're planning for an urban setting, you're thinking a lot more things than just like cleanup or how tall the trees get. You also have to think about some of the other things it's going to be exposed to, like exhaust, dogs, those type of things. Please dismiss each delegating student. My apologies. So, tree choice will affect other landscaping choices, shade patterns, appearance of the site for years to come, and then moving into urban tree limitations, you have to deal with compacted soils. Engineers love compacted soils because you can build a building on top of it. It serves as a load-bearing surface for buildings, concrete, and asphalt. Earth-moving equipment compacts the soil tightly to support building projects, and concrete and construction may change soil pH and quality. So, but trees hate it. No room for roots to spread. If the soil is compacted too much, the roots will grow into itself and kill it over time. Soil is too tight to take in oxygen and moisture as well. Compacted and disturbed soil may be of poor quality for plant growth. So compacted soils are just going to condense those tree roots in. It won't expand on growth and actually probably stunt the growth of the tree, if not kill it. So impervious coverage, permanently covered soil. So this is anything covered by concrete, asphalt, any sort of typical urban materials. So some examples of this: sidewalks, paved parking lots, streets, and buildings. And then you also have to deal with the urban heat island effect. So this is temperatures in large urban areas that are often warmer than those in rural areas. So as I talked about in the previous lesson, if it's 80 degrees out in the country, it's probably about 100 degrees out in the city. And some causes of this are impervious coverage, reflected and radiated heat from asphalt, buildings, and car tops. And then urban parking lots can be about 20 degrees hotter than surrounding areas. So urban tree problems include high heat and rapid water loss, concentrated rainfall runoff, increased salinity, erosion, altered wind, sun, and rain patterns. And in conclusion, it takes some tough trees to survive under these conditions. So there's a lot to take into effect, like what's going to affect this tree. Is there runoff? Is there animals going up to it? Is there exhaust fumes on it? So you need to pick a tree that's pretty hardy for city life locations. So street trees. Trees planted between roadways and sidewalks to provide both shade and beauty. Some challenges for these include overhead utility lines, compacted soil, car exhaust, and snow removal chemicals. Some problems here: they're shorter lived and they buckle sidewalks. So anytime you use a live plant, those roots are going to want to grow somewhere. So sometimes they'll knock out sidewalks, especially with the expansion of the trunk as well. So, and their lives are a little bit shorter. So as you can see here on the picture on the right, you have a tree that's getting pretty thick here. It's probably going to start knocking out some of these curbs and sidewalks soon. And then over time, they get too tall for the power lines. So you have to make sure you're cutting those back to make sure you're not touching those lines, because sometimes when you touch those lines, those trees will light right up. So urban tree opportunities. What about those tough urban conditions? Some trees can survive and even do well. The challenge: choose the right tree and treat it well. And then a few urban benefits: adding color and beauty, enriching the air with oxygen, removing air pollutants, filtering water runoff, shading to reduce air conditioning costs, protecting from wind in the winter, providing privacy, and blocking freeway noise. So there are a lot of benefits here of using different trees. This cherry blossom on the right, one of the most beautiful trees I've ever seen. Actually, I have a couple in my yard at home. They look great, and they can take on that on an urban field. They can take on the gases. They can take on root expansion in compacted soils. So there are trees out there that can look beautiful and give you the impact you want. So, engineered soils, by definition, these are special soil mixes sometimes used for planting street trees. So an example here, Cornell University, they have their own structural soil, combines crushed stone, soil, and hydrogel materials that expand with moisture, can be compacted to support concrete, and also provides good growing conditions for trees, primarily used for street tree plantings. So analyzing the cost, Cornell researchers found their structural soil to be very cost effective when compared to the cost of removing and replacing trees and heaved sidewalks and paying for liability losses from accidents. So typically when you buy a soil like this, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, kind of like a Miracle-Gro, but the benefits of it later on are going to outweigh that cost that you're spending initially, because to plant a new tree is way more expensive than to put the proper soil around it in the first place. So when we're choosing the right tree, where do we find information? Arbor Day Foundation resources, extension web pages for local information. Ours in Pennsylvania would be Penn State Extension, local nurseries and arborists, and then some bad habits to avoid. We don't want to have weak branches, litter from seeds, pods, or fruits, so don't put any Kuza dogwoods in. Extensive root systems can cause damage, poisonous leaves, pollen causing allergic reactions, and then invasive trees. So this is one likely to cause economic and environmental harm or harm to human health because it spreads too easily and replaces other desirable species. So always read your labels and do your research before you plant anything in an urban setting. So climate considerations, plant hardiness zones based on average minimum temperatures. We have 13 zones in the United States, our coldest being Alaska and our warmest at 13 being Hawaii and Puerto Rico. For here in Pennsylvania, we like to stick between like the 3 to 7 range. Use tree guides or web reference pages to determine your plant hardiness zone. So in here, when we're identifying different plants, we always use the Missouri Botanical Garden site. And at the very last question is our tree hardiness zone. So if we can stay in between those 3 to 7 ranges, then typically our trees will succeed. Just make sure you read up on what you can use for it. So if we take a look at these two trees up here, this evergreen on the left is definitely way too close to the house, but would grow better in Pennsylvania than the palm tree, because once it gets cold, it will definitely die off. So locally grown trees are likely to do well. As we talked about in the previous lesson, make sure if you can use native trees, but don't always think that native is going to be best for an area. So size and purpose, how will your tree be used? It's going to be a shade tree, a street tree, fruit, privacy, or a noise filter. Find the tree's mature height and spread, available in tree guides or in online materials, and it should fit the scale of the lot, location, and function. Measure out the tree's mature dimensions and consider how the height will fit the spot. So if you have a tree that has a mature width of 50 feet and the street's only 30 feet wide, you probably don't want to use that tree. So some other things to consider are the site conditions sunny or shady, they high or low moisture levels, pH or salinity problems, building placement, utility lines, lot lines, backups, and then you have to consider biodiversity. So short for biological diversity, the variety of living things in an ecosystem. Many trees of the same species increases the chance of problems from diseases or insects. Biodiversity works as a hedge against disease or pest problems. And then more varied habitat for bird and other animals. For a little bit more on biodiversity, make sure you check back on a few of my previous lessons because we go in depth on those as well. So consider the overall landscape plan. Shrubs and other small plants are part of a harmonious and successful design. How will the trees and plants provide shade, privacy, erosion control, or fulfill other valuable functions? And think about shape, color, fruit, fall leaf, color, bark, winter interest, wildlife habit, and speed of growth. So make sure whenever you're designing all this, that you think about a variety of different things, not just how tall is the tree going to get. You want to think about how shade's going to affect from that tree all the stuff underneath that you might want to put in. So there's a lot of things to consider here. And then finally, a good nursery can provide advice. Make sure you utilize the people that you buy things from, your salesmen. Make sure they're reputable. Make sure that they know what they're talking about, and they will help you along the way. So getting started, there's 3 ways to purchase: bare root, ball and burlapped, and containerized trees. And just a tip here, trees with smaller trunk size generally transplant more easily than those with larger trunks. So 3 ways to purchase trees: bare root, soil removed from the roots, larger root systems. Roots must be kept wet and lighter and easier to handle. They can also be planted in cooler weather because they'll warm up as soon as that dirt gets over top of them, but it's not suitable for all trees. Ball and burlapped, these are dug out of the soil. Roots and soil wrapped in burlap, sometimes surrounded by a wire basket. So the bigger that your root ball gets, you might need a wire basket. 100 to 300 pounds, expensive to ship and difficult to move. So make sure you're buying these from a local landscape nursery that did them on the spot, or you will be paying for those shipping fees. Containerized. These are dug out of the soil, roots and soil transferred to a pot, heavy to transport and move. And then moving into successful tree planting, careful transplanting, mulch spread in a wide circle but not touching the tree bark. Careful watering first couple of years, roots must grow and recover from transplanting. So anytime you move something, it's going to need a couple years for it to get into its new ground and get those root systems going. You can use some soil additives to speed that process along if you would like, but typically natural growth will do the trick. So the bottom line here, trees in urban areas may face challenges such as hotter temperatures and compacted or poor quality soils. Trees add beauty and environmental benefits. And consider climate purpose, lot restrictions, and mature height and width to choose the right tree. That is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions about any of this today, please give me a call down here in the landscape design classroom, and I will gladly help you out. Other than that, enjoy your day, folks, and thanks for listening.